I've seen it as a bonus because what it's actually shown people who haven't been prepared to take the plunge to maybe go remote in organisations or other, the fact that BPM can help them get there.
Welcome to Process Pioneers, the show that takes a deep dive into the minds of decision makers, key influencers and process experts who are pioneering the world of everything process.
Welcome to another episode of Process Pioneers. My name is Daniel Rayner. I'm the host of Process Pioneers. And in each of these episodes, I get the privilege of sitting down with different people in different organizations. And we talk about the topic of business process management and anything and everything that falls under that. And it's such a broad area. It's such a diverse topic. And we can only scrape the surface in these conversations. But I do like to bring people in that have different perspectives, that do work, whether they work from more of a senior leadership role, whether they work from the process modeling role, whether they come in as a change manager, whoever it might be. Everyone's got their own experiences and understanding of what business process management can do for an organization. And today I have the absolute privilege of sitting down with Virginia Shaw. Now, Virginia is a change manager and project manager. That's what her background is in, and has worked in a range of organizations from small startups all the way through to large government departments. So I'm really excited to understand more about her experience, I guess, in this such a breadth of size of organizations. So Virginia, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks, Daniel, and hello, everyone.
That's good. So what we might do to begin with, obviously that was a very small introduction, and I'd love our audience to learn more about who you are and get a greater understanding of your background. So maybe if you can take us back to where, I guess, business process management was first introduced to you and in what context, and then take us on a journey leading up to today.
So business process management really came to light for me when I was farming. I had 17 years as a farmer. Wow. And if you need to know how to run a farm, it's all about process. It's a process from getting up in the morning and feeding your animals to your weekly process of what each day of the week means in your farm calendar to ensure that you run your business correctly.
Right.
But it's also important to have those processes mapped and ready, because if you have a team of people working for you and you have to ask them to do something or delegate something to them, then you have clear, defined processes that they can follow that also gives them comfort and empowers them to do the job. And I think that that's really important. Mm-hmm. I've then used processes from that all the way through. I mean, I process my day. I'm one of these people who have a day. So for me, processes become, and business processes become really important. It's become important throughout my career, from change management, project management. When I was a ministerial advisor, it was just as important. So it's in my DNA now. It's become part of me and part of what I do with both small businesses and in larger organizations.
Yes, that's great. Thanks for sharing that. And I think what you're saying there about, it's in and through your day. I think it's in and through everyone's day, whether people realize it or not, whether you understand that you are following a process or a set of tasks. If you want to deliver value or add value, whether it's in an organizational sense or whether it's in your own personal life, you're going to be putting a process in place to ensure the best outcome and also to ensure that you can improve it and tweak it into the future. But I guess one question I had on that is, it sounds like process was came natural to you. You identified processes, you could see where the weaknesses were, where the areas of opportunity were. Do you think that is a mindset thing that comes natural for some people, where they automatically identify what the process is, but for others it's maybe not so natural? Or what are your thoughts on that?
I think for some people it's very natural. It just, you go with a flow, you get a flow, you see things, you see patterns.
Yep.
You also start to see tasks or other things that are repeatable, and you want to improve that. But for other people, it can be a real struggle. It can be something that they really need to learn, because it might be going against their grain or against how they may cognitively function. So there are two very, very distinct: those who can feel it and see it and it happens, and those who do need to learn it. And I think we need to really support those who find process a struggle, to be able to help them through it. We shouldn't be throwing them into it. We need to take them through that journey so that they can actually get comfortable with it.
Yes, that's great. And I'd imagine that as a change manager or project manager, a lot of the work that you have done and are doing is with people. You know, you're bringing people along for the journey, you're involving people. And I think that's one thing that, you know, a skill is required there. You can't just be a technical person. You can't just understand maybe what the process is, but how are you communicating to different people? How are you including people along so that they feel empowered? And but I guess on that point, what's one of the biggest challenges that an organization may face when, I guess, trying to bring people along for the journey, the process practitioners, the frontline employees, the one that's carrying out the processes? If the organization adopts BPM and this mindset of let's manage our processes, how do you go about making people feel empowered?
I think the first thing to make people feel empowered is actually to give them time. So often we go into a project or into a change situation where we are under a time pressure, and the expectation is that people are going to turn how they do things around literally in the smell of an oily rag. So we might only give them 2 or 3 weeks, when in fact we need to have a longer period of time with people so we can actually understand how they do something, why they do something, and what that something means to them. And then we can work with people to bring them through to the new process, or for them to help us to map a process. But it's really about time, because you do need to build up a relationship. You can't just go in and do it. I think we've seen so many examples in where we've seen, you know, with airlines do it, with large organizations do it, where literally business stops at 5 o'clock on a Friday and something new starts on Monday, and we've lost people along the way. You need to invest the time and the effort, and it's not easy, and it does require a financial commitment to do it. But to me, that's it. It's the time to bring people through it, and to honour the people as you're bringing them through it as well.
Yes. And do you have any, I guess, different ways that you can share with us of how do you bring people along for that journey? You know, there'd be different people that'll be listening to this, and that they might be in a team or a department where, you know, that they're about to embark on this change. They're about to bring in process management into the project that they're doing, or whatever it might be. And you know, that they're understanding that, hey, we can't just make changes and tell people that, well, you know, you might have been doing that for the last 5-10 years, but we're doing it this way now. How do you, I guess, bring those people along? What are some different ways you can bring people along so that they're not sort of resistance to change, but they're actually for it, and more than that, they're helping the change happen?
It's engaging them early, and it's engaging them as you actually move them through. So don't be, I think the key is don't be, I hate to use the word dishonest, but don't be in a position where you're not really telling them what's actually happening. Let them be aware that there is something that's going to happen, and seek their input into how this can happen and how it can be of a benefit to them. What am I doing? If we change how you do this, how will that affect you? How will that affect the job you do? And then start from that position of the how will it affect, or what benefit, and then bring them through and continually bring them through the process. And start, if you're going to change things, start to work with people to instill the new ways of working early. Oh, that's really interesting how you're doing it. we're suggesting that maybe this is a nice way of doing it because it's going to be easier for you to do this. Do you want to give it a try for me? Because we'd really love you to try it because we know you understand it. So get people involved very, very early in the piece, bring them through that process. I think one of the worst things you can do is just use, as a change manager, I get really frustrated when people say all change management is about sending out comms. It's about an email or it's about a poster. It's more than that. So get people involved, bring them through that process, have a chat with them. They're going to be scared because they're going to be going, why is that project manager wanting to speak to me? What's going on? Be open, upfront, and honest.
Yep. That's great. That's great. And do you have any examples of, I guess, wins that you've experienced where, an organization has adopted BPM, whether it's on a project level or enterprise wide, and the culture was, there was a good culture for them to adopt BPM or the right, I guess, change management happened to allow the culture to adopt BPM. Do you have any examples of wins where the organization saw great value from business process management?
One of the interesting things is, and we've all probably seen it, and you will see great business process management happening in call centers.
Right.
Call centers and help desk functions have really changed over the years because we now have much better tools to be able to operate places like that. We know that there are really good tools out there. I was in an organization that had asked me to go in, and they were actually moving a help desk in a call center from being a really very, very manual process where the only way they had a knowledge base was, someone would hold up a piece of paper and go, oh, I just got this from the program area. Who needs these notes? Through to moving to a much better, solid business process where things were online, knowledge articles were kept in a able to be an easily accessible spot for everybody. But it was a big change for these people because many of these people had been doing it the same way for 20 years.
Yes, right.
The way I worked with them, though, was I actually sat with them. I actually learned how to become a call center person. Right. And I sat with them for a week and watched how they did their job so that as I saw things that arose, I could go, hey, wouldn't it be fantastic if instead of having that funny paper going around, which we don't know what version it is, you could hit a button and all of a sudden the right stuff would come up. And they were going, oh, that would make it so much easier. And I said, and the other people at the other end could change it really fast.
Right.
That's how I did that. Introduced the new business process, introduced the new mapping for the business process, but did it in a way where they felt and you could sell the benefit, but you became part of them, so they didn't feel the threat. Then
yes.
The organisation could bring the new process in seamlessly because it was just like a handover, hand and glove.
Yes.
That was huge. That was a huge win because up to then people had been going in and saying, oh, we're changing the process. We're going to map your process and you're all going to lose jobs and we're going to map your process to the nth degree because you don't know what you're doing. And the worst part was going in and saying, you don't know what you do. That's why we're mapping your process.
Right. And so basically you got in the trenches there with them, alongside them. Let's understand what their job is. Let's understand the pain points and the problems that they're experiencing. Because if we can see it through their eyes, through their perspective, then we'll be able to, I guess, make suggestions or improvements that they're on board with.
Yep. So that when the project manager then came along and had these fantastic diagrams, best diagrams I'd seen, and he was able to roll them out, they weren't scary. They were all swim lanes and connecting dots and boxes, but they weren't scary to people because you could actually point out on this is where you are, on this, and they got it. And therefore the organisation had two wins. They had a better outcome for a critical function, but they then got a much better process that was mapped and a much better real-time process that was mapped, as opposed to having somebody just come in and go, oh, it's a call center function. You're going to introduce this software. This is what it looks like.
Yes. And honestly, they're in the best position to identify the process and understand where the current pains that they're feeling, you know, whether it's someone on in the call center or whether it's someone in a warehouse or a factory somewhere. They're the ones carrying out the work. They're going to be feeling the pains and the problems. So they're probably in the best position to identify, well, if we tweak this or if we improve this is going to make the job a whole lot much better.
And cold store logistics is another great one of those. I remember when I was with Melbourne, involved with Melbourne Market Authority, and they were wanting to go to new markets and change it to end-to-end cold store logistics.
Right.
So lorries entering in one end, goods going out the other, unlike what it is now, very much like what they do in Europe. Mm-hmm. And it was very much about speaking to the people and going, if from a logistics point of view, I've got goods landing at 0800 on this end and I've got to move them through a process for them to go out at 1200 on the other end, unload, how best to unload, how best to store, how best to move them through the place so that they can go load. So it's the same sort of thing. It's understanding what that process looks like so that then people can actually understand why they're there and the importance that they play throughout that journey.
Yes, that's great. That's great. And there'd be people listening right now that maybe they're in an organization where business process management hasn't been adopted. It's not something that's really being driven from the top down. But I guess in the same way that you've spoken about how to get buy-in from the frontline employees, how do you get buy-in from the process practitioners? You've been saying that you get alongside them, you sit with them, you understand their lens and through their perspective. But I guess in the same way, how do you get buy-in or sponsorship from the senior leadership? How do you communicate to the executive team, I guess, the value in BPM so that you're speaking their language, they're hearing what you're saying, and it makes sense to them?
So the exec conversation is very, very much a different conversation because the execs, whether they be in private industry or government, will be looking at two things. Mm-hmm. Will this reduce any form of risk that I have? And secondly, what's going to be either the cost or the reduction in my costs if I introduce this? So how will it make things become faster, cheaper, easier? And that's the way you have to switch the conversation. The other way of switching it too with execs, especially in execs in government, it depends on where you might be, say, in a budget cycle. So if they're looking at implementing or wanting to implement BPM and they're going into a cycle where they need to actually put up either a new policy proposal or they need to bid for dollars within their organisation's budget envelope, they're really going to be focused on, if I introduce it, what will be the long-term state saving for me? So what's the strategic driver for me to do this, and how will that therefore help the organisation overall?
Yes. That's good. I think it's important that for people to understand that your processes need to tie into the strategy. If you're doing BPM work, the executive team needs to be able to see, not just the executive team, but the organisation needs to see that the work that the employees are doing, it is delivering value to the strategy. It is aligned with the strategic direction of the business. It is meeting those goals and objectives, because I think there are organizations out there, and a few examples come to mind where, before COVID, for example, this one particular story, that they were this organization here in Australia, they were doing hundreds of programs or projects, and COVID hit, and it forced them to really think through, well, where are we delivering value, and what are we doing, and is it delivering value is the question that they were asking, because we can't do everything now. We've got to make cuts, or we've got to work out, we've got to understand exactly what's going on, because we've got to make sure that everything we do delivers value. They ended up scrapping most of the projects, most of the programs, and then I think there was around 20 or so left, down from a couple of hundred, because those were the ones that were delivering value. And so but it took a pandemic for them to stop and really, understand, well, what is worthwhile, and where are we just doing work for the sake of work? So it's got to align to the strategy. I like that point.
Yeah, it really does.
That's good. Yeah. And so one other point I wanted to touch on was about making those small incremental process improvements, because I think that kind of ties in what you were saying before about, working with the people, working with the frontline employees, in introducing a new process or a change. If it's too complex, if it's too complicated, if it doesn't make sense to them, if they can't easily consume this change, then that you're going to face resistance and objection. So talk to us about, I guess, can business process management start small? Should it start small? And talk to us about, I guess, that balance between starting small and biting off much more than you can chew.
I would always suggest that you do start off small, because sometimes we get so ambitious because we love processes. That's the thing. We love this stuff. We understand it. These people don't, or the organizations don't even. But for us, if you were to put, 5 process people in a room, like, we would be just dang, 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 blah, 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 blah. But that's because we have a different vision. The way those of us who have dealt in process for a long time, we see so much value in it, and we can see how a process can build on another process. It becomes this incredible optimized solution. But for many places, it has to be starting off small. It's a bit like when project management became, the thing in government many years ago. Everybody started off small, and then we've built, and unfortunately in building, we've lost some of the core skill, and we've lost some of the core principles. Right. So I think that the key is starting off small and keeping to the core principles. People like principles, especially people who you have to take along a journey, because they will always keep coming back to you and saying, but where's the proof? What drives this? Where's the document that says this is how you should do it? Start off small in the back of your mind as the process, as the person who's doing the process work. Think big. So it's think big in the back, but work small in the front.
Right.
And think of it very much. I think of it very much as the wall and the bricks. Be small, another line of bricks. Be small, another line of bricks, and you get that whole wall, and then you get the 4 walls, and then you can put the roof on. But
yes.
Small often, because the other thing is, in many ways, you may not, especially you see it in business. Your ability to keep building on what you're doing, either introducing processes, mapping your processes, mapping a change, can also be driven by the finances that you have in order to do that. So you may have to start, you do have to be small. You've got to work within your envelope, and then grow it out.
Yes, yes. And I think that, in starting small, you're seeing those small wins where there is tangible value. You're not waiting 6, 12, 18 months before before you understood your process so that you can improve them, but you're starting small, you're making those changes early so that not only the frontline employees are seeing the fruit from the work that you're doing, but also the executives. They want to understand what's the return on investment, how long is it going to take, and if you can show them a small win and a small amount of value, then that will give them the momentum and the motivation to be like, well, let's keep doing this. Let's scale this enterprise wide if that's what they choose to do. But
and also likely to break down resistance.
Right.
So yes, you'll get resistance in change when we have this stupid, silly habit of saying we're going to change. And as soon as you find those 5 letters send the fear of God in most people. So what you've got to do is if you bring them on, you do little bits and you get them, people not only are less resistant to it, but by bringing them through as well and showing them, they also become less tired. Like we all know, change is constant, but they'll become a little less tired of the change because they actually see a return. And yes. Exactly as you said, they see a return. They see how it can be there. Or for those who will find that it's hard, it gives them the opportunity to see that at an early stage, this isn't going to work for them. And if they do need to move on to another role, or they do need to, find a different job because this is now just completely it gives them the opportunity to start to think about how they can do that, so that it gives them if you like, there's an exit strategy for those who aren't going to be able to be there at the end. But if we just belt it out and go bang, there's no option for those people. They will get cranky, and that will then just tarnish the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. And in speaking about resistance, you just mentioned resistance then, and getting those objections. What are some objections that an organisation may face when introducing, or not even an organisation? Maybe there's someone listening right now that they work internally at an organisation and they really want to introduce a culture of business process management into the organisation. What are some of the objections or some of the biggest resistance that they are going to face? Obviously, every organisation is different, but what are maybe more of the common ones?
Why? Why are you doing this now? What have I been doing that now makes you need to come in and either map or have an understanding of why I do my job? So there's that whole suspicion of why are we doing it? Mm-hmm. The other suspicion is if we're starting to do BPM, we're starting to look at business process management, what's next? What are they going to automate? Why do they want to map this to know what we do so that they can find another way of doing it?
Right, okay.
Or if we're mapping it and they want to understand how we do a function, are they planning on keeping that function here, or now they've got some idea that maybe they can move that function offshore?
Right.
It's all that sort of suspiciousness. When we as practitioners aren't being suspicious at all, we're just trying to improve because we know that if we can, there's so much evidence to show that if we understand a process, if we reduce keystrokes, if we can reduce the time that it takes for an item to get from point A to point B, in a production line, if we understand that if we up a speed in one area on a production, lower a speed, or map how an IT system works, that there's a degree of return. But people don't get that at the same level that we do. They find it's a little bit suspicious, like it's
right.
Why are they doing it?
Yes. Okay.
Yeah,
no, that's very interesting. And obviously, like moving forward, I mean, the year that we've just had, it's been a very turbulent year, and moving forward, it's really going to change organizations, many organizations, the way they deliver value, the way they operate their business, because when COVID hit, we had large office buildings filled with thousands of people that are now working from home, working from their individual home offices, and not just here, obviously all around the world, organizations face this challenge and quite rapidly, and I think the ones that did well and managed that transition well are the ones that understood what the process was, but it was also documented down somewhere. There was a central sort of repository where people could go to understand what's going on, because you can no longer have those side conversations in the office space. The conversations around the water bubbler, like all of these conversations where a lot of value comes from just those organic interactions. But now it's everything's got to be intentional. Everything's got to be over Zoom or Teams or different software like that. But I guess looking to the future, what does BPM look like moving forward over the next 2, 3, 5 years? And where do you think organizations should really, I guess, focus their time, effort, and energy?
So with total respect for many who may be watching today who have not had a great COVID experience and who may have been in a situation where they have personally lost loved ones or other, I actually think COVID's been really good for BPM.
Right.
I've seen it as a bonus, because what it's actually shown people who haven't been prepared to take the plunge to maybe go remote in organizations or other, the fact that BPM can help them get there, and BPM can drive down their overall operating costs, and BPM can give them a much happier workforce. Because let's be honest, if you've only got to go from your bedroom to your desk and you don't have a 40, 50, 60 or plus minute commute, if I can get the best people to do and help me run my organization or my business, and I might be, say, sitting in Canberra, but I can get someone in Perth with a 2 or 3 hour time difference, but I can get the best and I can locate and I'm still doing things. Or for me, because I do work with people who are in the UK, and at the moment it's an 11-hour difference. But if we can do that, we can do it because we've got the mechanism in place to enable us to do it. Right. So I actually think that, as I said, with due respect to those who may have been personally affected by COVID, I think that there has been some wins. And one of the biggest wins has been the beauty and the science, and BPM is a science, the science of and the applicability of BPM in organisations. You're absolutely correct. The ones that are coming out at the end of this are those that have their processes mapped. They've got great playbooks. They know exactly where they're at and what they can do. And then it's actually forced other organisations to start to think about doing it.
Yeah, that's great. And obviously great for those that have been well equipped for the season. Not so great for those that, obviously it's been a very turbulent year for a lot of people, both professionally and personally. But I guess one thing I wanted to ask following that is that there would be people listening right now that maybe it has been a very turbulent year for them, and particularly in their organization, and they're learning about business process management, maybe because they've been forced to understand, well, what is actually going on now, because we need an effective way to easily communicate to the organization so that everyone can easily understand it in a very simple way. Where does that person go next to, maybe listening to this 30-minute conversation was the first time they heard about BPM, or they're just starting to learn, but where do they go now? Because obviously the internet, it's quite broad. There's a lot out there, and sometimes it's a bit overwhelming to understand, well, what is the right information for my scenario in my organization at this current time? So do you have any recommendations of what that person, where you'd point that person?
I think you're right about the first spot is the internet. So get an appreciation. Actually, find out what is BPM, because there are so many definitions about BPM. What is it? Come back to first basics as well. What am I wanting to achieve?
Right.
What do I need? Why do I need? So why do I want to learn about it? And what do I want to achieve from learning about it? And then it's a bit like the 5 W's in the H question. And that's how I would start. I'd start with the 5 W's in the H question. Who needs to know about it? Why do I need to know about it? What do I need to know about it? Where can I find information out? And that will be, the where will be a game. Think of the where as the Where's Wally game of the world. Right. Because until you know exactly the why you're wanting to do it, the where, you can't drive the where. The who, come back to these. If you're looking for the who, come back to these sessions. There have been some fantastic speakers across these sessions, and I would dare say if you reached out to any one of us on these sessions, we would try and help you with the where, or steer you somehow. And then that will lead to the how. Yes. So I think that's the way to do it. There's no one singular resource. You could go to a book of knowledge or other, but you need to know what you're doing it for. Yes. Because it's no use if you're only wanting to do something little within your organisation, say automating, say your organisation is now going on a campaign where it wants to develop a sales funnel for a particular reason, and it wants to gather email addresses or other. If you're only a small organisation, you may not want to go to a large CRM to drive that, or a large business process to do that. You might only need to start off small. So find out the what, and then look. The internet will take you down some rabbit warrens, without a doubt, but you'll also learn from the rabbit warrens. Plenty of books out there as well. Google and look at some of the titles, but come back to these resources and see who's had a session here. And I'm sure anybody here would definitely, if you were looking for some assistance, reach out and help you and try and steer you in a direction.
Yes, that's great. That's really good. And I think, the people that I've been talking with, they're practitioners, they're BPM practitioners that are currently working in organizations, whether internally or as a consulting role, that are putting these things into practice. It's not just theory, because theory is good, but when the rubber hits the road, you've got all of these sort of unforeseen hurdles and challenges and curveballs that do come up. And so you do want to learn from those that are, currently putting this into practice and have the experience that you want to glean from. But Virginia, I just want to thank you for sitting down with me. We've been talking for 35, 40 minutes now, and we can only scrape the surface on what there is to know and understand. But I think there's been definitely, I've been scribbling down notes here because I've been learning a lot. And I think if the audience can only pull one thing away from our conversation, one thing that can spark a thought in their head, one thing that can change a mindset, or one thing that can, they can take back to their organization and it starts a conversation. I think that's a really valuable thing, or a really good thing. We're trying to encourage people to learn about business process management, but go about it the right way. That it's multifaceted. There are many things to consider, and by learning from experts like yourself that are putting this into practice, I think that's where people can really learn about it. So I just want to thank you for joining with me today and sharing your knowledge with myself and the wider community.
Thank you. Thanks, Daniel. It's been a great opportunity, and I wish everybody the best of luck as they move forward with their BPM careers and their journeys. It's a great place to be. It's an exciting place to be. And we have the opportunity to help so many people with the work that we do.